I'm Juan Martinez, Senior Editor at PC Mag. I'm joined today by Brent Johnson, co-founder and managing partner of Cadence Preferred, a sales and marketing campaign, content, and training company. Brent writes a weekly column for PC Mag on modern marketing. And in this week's column, he discussed the Amazon Kindle Oasis. Brent, it wasn't the device specifically that got your wheels spinning, but rather the product rollout that you were really excited about. Can you talk to us a little bit about the rollout and if you thought it was a good one or not?
Sure. So it's interesting how Amazon chooses to do things similarly, usually. So oftentimes companies will make a big splash. Amazon almost seems to go a little bit minimalist in their approach. But in some respects, they're able to get a little bit more attention because they're able to do some of those things. Now, Amazon has the benefit of being a top 10 site worldwide, top 5 site within the US. So, I mean, they have certain advantages that a lot of the rest of us don't have. But it's still interesting to me that, I mean, essentially you had a rollout with a tweet by Jeff Bezos, a leak, and then literally banners on their website. And you could look at that in one way and say, is that really the best way to do it? By the same token, they've been phenomenally successful with a lot of their product rollouts. And so it's hard to argue against some of the things that they choose to do.
Now, in your column, you talk to our audience a bit about some of the limitations they may have. Not everybody is Amazon. Not everybody has the audience that Amazon has. So what can the small to mid-sized business do to sort of gain the advantage that, Amazon has with the large mainstream audience?
That's a great question. In some respects, too, I mean, not only are they a really large company that's going to get traffic no matter what, but companies like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Samsung, et cetera, they're able to spend so much money on R&D as well that in a lot of respects, it's their product alone that is able to drive the launch. Whereas for a lot of the rest of us that don't necessarily have billions of dollars that we can put against R&D, we've got to compensate for some of those things from a product perspective instead with some of the things that we do from a marketing perspective. I think about one of the things that is an example that came about because of the Kindle Oasis rollout. If you go search on Kindle Oasis right now, almost all of the search results that come out have to do not even necessarily with the announcement, but with the leak that seemed to happen a couple of days before. Now, whether or not that was truly a leak or whether that was an engineered leak on their part, I can't say that. But it's interesting to think that everyone was more excited by the fact that there was a leak than there even was necessarily from the announcement that they did on Wednesday morning. And that really kind of highlights some things for us. Granted, the press, for a lot of the products that we're working with, the press isn't going to be jumping on and trying to get an early advantage of announcing our products. So there's some things that we can do to create almost the essence of a leak. With our customers, can we do something to send them some early information? And especially if some of those customers are active on social media, will they be doing things that maybe start to get the word out a little bit early? Or can we, like CNBC is not going to really care about our product, but is there a trade publication? Is there a local paper that's hungry for, or a local site that's hungry for copy? Can we get some of them interested to do something a little bit earlier than someone else might be? Just anything we can do to start getting a little bit of buzz and a little bit of coverage can really help out.
And the coverage doesn't always have to be good, right? Sometimes bad press is good press as well. You talk about that a little bit in the column.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking, actually. So I used to think that bad press was bad. And yet I think I've changed my view on that because just in general, I think the issue that most of us deal with is simply awareness. Now, most of the time, we probably want awareness that is good awareness for obvious reasons. But if we're able to get any kind of awareness at all, usually bad coverage is someone's opinion. Well, I think most of our customers are smart enough to form their own opinions. So even if they first become aware of us because of a bad coverage or a bad opinion by one person, at least they've become aware of us, and then they can make their own decisions as to whether or not our product or our service is something that they're interested in. And so the key there is really just getting coverage more so than it is whether or not that coverage is good or bad. And admittedly, like maybe there's even a little bit of fun, playful stuff you can do with it. I mentioned in the article, there may even be an aspect of, so you get a bad review, can you thank the person for the bad review? How might they feel about that? I mean, if they really don't like us, maybe they get a little bit more ticked off about this, and maybe they'll give us some even more coverage, and that gives us more awareness as well. So good, bad, obviously we want to go for good, but I would take whatever coverage you can get for your product regardless.
Speaking of fun, Amazon had a little fun in discussing the product. When they talk about the product's weight, they don't mention the case. But when they talk about the battery life, which comes with an extra battery, they mention the case and they talk about that battery boost.
Right.
What can small businesses, what can medium-sized businesses do to sort of gain that same trickery, that same advantage that Amazon gained?
You know, so I'm a marketer by trade, and there's probably a reason sometimes that marketers have a bad reputation in the industry, because yes, we will bend things whichever way we need to fit our purposes. So you mentioned with the battery cover. So you get weeks, they say, of battery life with the current Kindle. First of all, I will say I've never actually experienced any problems by only having weeks of battery life. But now Amazon gets to come out and say that we get months of battery life. But again, it's not through the battery that's in the device. The device is actually very light, and I'm sure they did lots of R&D to get that weight down. Now it's a matter of they've got this added battery within the case that gives you that months of battery life. And what we really see in that, and the lesson for marketers, is if you can connect up your product or service with an add-on or an accessory or different things like that, you can kind of use them combined when it fits your purposes, and you can separate them when it fits your purposes. So you reference the fact battery life versus lightness. We don't hear anything about the cover when they're talking about how thin and light their product is. We happen to suddenly have the battery swoop in the door, or the cover swoop in the door when they're talking about the battery life, because now it fits their purposes to talk about the months of battery life that they get. Microsoft does the same thing with the Surface Book in terms of battery life with both the keyboard portion and the portion that's in the tablet. You get tons of battery life when the two are connected. When it's disconnected, you have much less battery life, but we don't hear about battery life on that. We just hear about how thin and light the product is. How can we address that for our products? If you have a service, or maybe you have a product and you have an add-on, maybe support contract or different things like that, think about the benefits that you get when you combine and position the benefits of your product plus your service when it makes sense to do so. But if you need to, then let's say your product plus your service costs a certain amount, but at other times you want to emphasize how economical your product is. Maybe you need to talk about just the product and not the service contract on top of that. So think hard, and that actually also goes into your product design. So are you able, when you're designing your product, to separate items out so you can have core functionality in one area, and maybe you have some things that you add on as well on top of that. And then you can decide for a certain set of customers, you sell one, for a certain set of customers, you sell the bundle.
Okay, so Amazon couldn't have done everything perfectly with this rollout. Is there anything that you would have changed?
I think, again, coming back to from an Amazon perspective, they go minimal, but they can afford to go minimal. I think in general, a concern I have, and this is a little bit beyond just Amazon rollouts. When I think of rollouts these days with the big players in the market, your Microsofts, your Apples, your Samsungs, etc., the concern that I have in general with, it seems like everyone's fallen into the trap of really these launch events are really just press events. And even then, they're more similar to trade show speeches. You have your rollout of VPs and different things like that. Is that really what we've come down to from a product launch perspective? I become concerned that a lot of the creativity and imagination and the storytelling that we should be doing in our product launches to really get attention, I'm fearful that we've kind of lost some of that. Now, again, the big boys, they can do that because they're going to get attention no matter what. But when you're launching your product and you don't have the weight of an Amazon or an Apple or a Google or other products behind you, it seems to me that you've got to work a little bit harder and think in terms of, what is your story? What is your hook? What type of interest or intrigue are you going to get? Can you turn aspects of your launch into a game or into some aspect that's actually going to engage your audience and get them to pay attention, and not just pay attention for a couple of minutes, but can you get them to pay attention over a longer period of time? So it's not so much whether Amazon, in Amazon's situation, did something wrong, but it's, if we're going to learn from what Amazon and other large companies are doing, it's almost like we have to look at what they're not doing and decide how we're going to compensate for the fact that we're not huge to gain interest from our customers.
Of the 5 takeaways that you mentioned that Amazon did really well, which do you think is the most important that my readers, that your readers, that the small business, the mid-sized business should take away from this rollout?
So I think when, in my mind, it comes down to ink and airtime, and that really showed up in 2 parts of the article, both the part that was talking about the leaks as well as the part that was talking about good press and bad press. In both of those cases, the leak and the good or the bad press, because of those things, they got more coverage, more space on the web, more articles, more airtime, video, etc. And that's really what we need to be thinking about there. It goes back to that aspect of awareness. You need to get awareness for your product. Once you've got awareness, granted, you've got to keep their interest and attention and different things like that. But it's really hard to sell anyone on the benefits of your product if they don't even know about it. So whatever you can do to get coverage on a website, on a blog, somebody posting a video on YouTube, whatever it is, those are the things you've got to do. And sometimes you're going to have to be a little bit risky to be able to get that kind of coverage, especially if your product isn't the Oasis or, you know, the latest iPhone.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question. Will you be buying a Kindle Oasis?
That is a great question. I sit with a Kindle Voyage today, and admittedly, the Voyage seems to meet most of my needs. I'm intrigued by the Oasis, but I think I'm going to have to stick with the Voyage, at least for the time being.
Well, Brent, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And for more of Brent's musings on modern marketing, be sure to go to pcmag.com today. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks a lot, Juan.